on the same time. Well, thank you to join our webinar today. I want to particularly greet and thanks for the participation the Russian trade representative in Belgium and Luxembourg and the Netherlands, Mr. Gorshkov and Mr. Makarov, as well the representative of the Russian Chamber of Commerce in Benelux and France, Mrs. Medvedeva. A few words on today's events rules. During the speaker intervention, I kindly ask you, everyone, to keep the microphone off on mute. I ask you please to send your questions to our WhatsApp number. You received it in yesterday in the information email. I will invite all those who ask the question to the dialogue during the Q&A session. At the end of the speech of our distinguished speaker during the Q&A session, we will discuss your question. So I would like to convey a word of greeting to the Consul General of the Kingdom of Belgium in St. Petersburg, Monsieur Hans Timbremont. Monsieur Timbremont, the floor is yours.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much, dear Oleg. It's always a big pleasure for me to collaborate with the Belgian-Luxembourg Chamber of Commerce when I have the opportunity. And it's also nice for me to be at least virtually in Moscow today. The Consulate General here has been locked down for nearly 13 weeks. As many people, we are respecting the health rules given by the Russian authorities as well as by the Belgian authorities. It has been quite a change for our business model. So the normal things we do in networking, hospitality, reaching out to Russian people, that's been under serious pressure, and we had to limit our physical contact with the outside world. We had to think of new creative ways to continue working. But it has also provided us with new opportunities to get in touch with people without having to leave our office like today. These days I'm in face-to-face with people from all over the Northwest region, which is actually an advantage brought about by the COVID crisis. Perhaps it's new for me. There has been a lot of solidarity between the EU consulates, the consulates at large here, and the authorities. We meet quite regularly online on video conferences. There's been a lot of help back and forth, a lot of willingness to listen and to give advice from the side of the St. Petersburg authorities and the Leningrad Oblast, which is actually very helpful for everybody. Solidarity between the EU colleagues and the embassies really came most into play when it came to facilitating the return of Belgian citizens, not just Belgians. Quite a few of them were Russians, actually, with permanent residence in Belgium. We have been able to get to do that, to facilitate the return of a few dozen people that way. The embassy even more. So that has been a very gratifying thing. We are also trying to give proper recognition and appreciation to health workers who are the real heroes in these things, in this crisis, who help vulnerable people. Looking to the future, I think we all are hoping, as I suppose is also the purpose of the conference of today, to start new life normality as soon as possible with a fair and just balance between protecting health and getting the economy working again, creating jobs for people. In the coming weeks, we hope to have our annual bilateral ministerial meeting, Belgium-Russia, and I'm sure our ministers from both sides will use that opportunity to concentrate concrete examples for cooperation. And this evening, I'm very happy that the speaker of this evening is Vice Rector of the HSE University. The consulate for some years now has good contacts with HSE in St. Petersburg. We have been collaborating quite often. And only a year ago, nearly to the day, during the visit of Vice Prime Minister Peters, who came for the International Economic Forum here, he was received by HSE here, and he gave a guest college, if you can call it that way, for the students and the academic staff, which was a big success. So I think I can only thank you all again for inviting me to this evening, and I hope, and I'm sure I will enjoy it very much, and I look forward to hearing you speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tibramo. Ivan Valerievich, the Vice Rector of the High School of Economics, the members of the Academic Council. I let the floor to you then, Ivan Valerievich. Please.
Thank you. Dear Oleg, Mr. Council General, ladies and gentlemen, it's a big honor and big pleasure to be here with you, here virtually, but in any case, we are all together, I understand. Only a few words of introduction because I'm here, why I'm here. First of all, because we have an agreement of cooperation with the Chamber of Commerce. We are very glad to have it, to work together. We have very good relations with our partners from Luxembourg and Belgium. We have a dozen of partners in Belgium, and we work closely with the University of Luxembourg. And it's a big and particular pleasure also for me to greet my, I would say, former colleagues, the trade representative Gershkov and the representatives of also of trade mission in Paris, because formerly I was also the chief of the trade mission, the trade representative of Russia to France. The main purpose of our meeting is to talk about the current situation in Russia and the perspectives of our international cooperation, particularly cooperation with Belgium and Luxembourg, but also obviously with the European Union. A brief introduction, first of all. Now, maybe you know that the situation in Russia is going to reach the normal way of living, of working. I'm in my jacket because I'm just coming from the university. We had an offline meeting there on next steps of our work. Even at this moment, there is a small number of my colleagues working offline. We'll continue to work online till September, and the university is closed for students. All exams will be organized online too. But in any case, as I said, maybe you know that lockdown ended in Moscow yesterday, and in other regions of Russia, the situation is quite stable and quite normal. In any case, in March, and we'll start with the March, we faced three big shocks, three big challenges, not only lockdown, not only pandemic shock. The first one was the collapse of oil prices, as you know, and it was a very serious impact and very risk for Russia, for Russian economy, because it still depends on oil exports and oil prices. First of all, the budget is depending on it a lot. And the second point, very important shock, was also the ruble depreciation. It followed the shock of oil prices, and in a few weeks the depreciation was of 10-15% in March. It was also very dangerous, first of all, because of risk of higher inflation. Inflation is a main target of central bank and of our financial authorities. The target is to maintain 4% last year and this year, and obviously with the shock of oil prices and ruble depreciation, there was a risk of higher inflation. A very big risk for all the economy and the population, of course. But hopefully we could overcome all these two shocks because now stock exchange indexes are stable. You know that there is a stabilization on oil markets and oil prices. The currency exchanges, I mean, ruble is also quite stable during the last couple of weeks. And the third shock arrived in March, was obviously the shock of lockdown restrictions, with a drastic fall in demand and supply. We all know that it's very unusual for a crisis situation. Normally we talk about the fall of demand, rarely fall of supply. In this case, in Russia, as in many other countries, there was a double shock for both sides. Considering all these three factors, I mean, oil prices, ruble depreciation, and lockdown restrictions, obviously we had to resee our growth forecasts. At the beginning of the year, the forecast for 2020 was of 1.7% of growth of GDP. At the beginning of April, end of March, there was a drastic also prognostics on -8, even -8% for GDP. Now, according last forecast of our university, our analytical center, it should be -5.2. In the frame of other forecasts in between -4, -6 overall for by the end of the year. And for the next year, we may forecast +3% of growth of GDP. In any case, we remain in a red zone because you may understand it with -5 this year and +3% next year, there will be always -2 if we compare it with the previous year, 2019. In any case, it could be better, even better than in Eurozone, because yesterday I could see the report of Christine Lagarde for Eurozone is -7.8 for this year and +5% for the next year. Always red zone for Eurozone. The difference is between -8 and +5 remains -3. So we are in a recession, of course. And the present situation in Russia, the recession situation, obviously, we imagine it, is first of all recession in April or May. We have a fall of industrial production. In April it was -6.6, and in manufacturing industries -10%. Always, if we compare it with Eurozone, there is -13, it seems to me. And obviously it's not equal for all branches because, for example, food, textile production and chemistry continue to grow. Probably the most important fall, also due to the lockdown and all restrictions on population, is linked to the consumption, -28%, and retail -27%, more or less the same. Obviously, because people remain at home, shops are closed, and there's no possibility to buy as previously. For example, for car selling, the drop down is very important, minus 77%. But once again, it's not so dramatic overall as we accepted at the beginning, I mean in March. And even another very important indicator, for example, the electricity consumption is also dropping down. For April is minus 6%. Is not so important as in the Eurozone. I know there is a big difference between countries, but in any way, it's minus 10, minus 30% in different cases. Of course, there is a big problem of unemployment, a risk of unemployment. Even Russia is in a good position on one hand. On the other hand, obviously, probably statistics are not so good in this way, but in any case, we registered the increasing of unemployment from official 4.5% to 5.7%, almost 6% of unemployment. Once again, for Europe is not so impressive, but for Russia, it's quite important. And if we consider also international trade, and first of all, what is most important for us, and in our cases for this meeting, our import from non-CIS countries, not neighboring countries, in April always is minus 20%, and by the end of the year, we expect minus 17% of diminution of our import due always the depreciation of ruble, but also unstable situation, financial situation, the situation of households. Even once again, despite the collapse of oil prices, despite of ruble depreciation, public finances are in a good position. In April, even we had a plus 10% of budget revenues in January, April. Once again, despite the fall of oil prices. Obviously, it was exceptional because the budget received the money from the selling operation of Sberbank stocks. But it was an important tool, an important measure to maintain stability of public finances. And we always have a very low public debt, government debt. It's at the level of 14%. Once again, if we compare it with many European countries and Belgium, it's probably nothing. Now, what will going on? It depends on different factors. First of all, of the policy responses of the government support to the economy. There is a big difference also between Russian economy and economy of European countries because of the role of small and medium enterprises. Probably in Russia, their contribution to GDP is 2, even 3 times less than in countries such as Belgium, France, or Italy. But it's very important that the government also, the measures of support of the government are linked also to the support of medium and small and medium enterprises. And first of all, the support is aimed to the population and to maintain the level of life of the population. The social policy now is a main target of the government. Overall, the program of the support probably is not so important if we compare it with the European Union. Now, according estimations of International Monetary Fund, Russian government spends 5% of its GDP, of Russian GDP, to the coronavirus pandemic support, the coronavirus crisis, with 35% of support in countries such as United States, France, Germany, and Italy. But what is important that the direct support, the direct financial support is more or less equal if we also take in consideration the rates of the support at the GDP. So more or less 3%. It's the main rate that we may find, for example, in France, Italy, or China. As I said, the main target of the support is low and lost incomes of population and employment. For example, the increasing budget expenses in March, April are mainly linked to the economy support, plus 26%, and health, increasing of more than 2 times, and social expenses, plus 21%. For example, if I may list some measures that the government has taken, now there is 12,000 rubles for every employee in small and medium enterprises from the public budget. 12,000 is not a big amount, but it, and if we compare with we calculate it in euros, for example, it's approximately 150 euros, but it corresponds to the minimum salary in Russia. Now, with the condition to maintain 90% of employees in the enterprise, the enterprise may have a loan at the rate of 2%. It's ridiculous in Russia if we consider also that the government launched the mortgage till November, also with a privilege rate of 8%. And it's quite rare to find a loan less than 10 or 12%, maybe I'm wrong, but in any case, 2% in Russia, loan for 2% is nothing. 6 months for credit vacations for enterprises, and 10,000 rubles for every child less than 16 years old. It's for all population, for all families, and so on and so on. Once again, the main aim now of the Russian government is to maintain stability in the field of employment, stability of incomes. What will happen then? It's quite difficult to say and to forecast for many reasons, because obviously, as I said, now oil markets are stable, but you know that OPEC Plus agreement is always maybe under discussion, so we'll see what happens also with oil. And obviously, we have to see what will happen globally. In Russia, as abroad, there is a big talk about the second wave of coronavirus in autumn, probably. We don't see clearly what will be the global situation, even despite the second wave of coronavirus. Statistics from Asia, mainly from India, from Latin America, Brazil. Statistics are very serious. So pandemic disaster still continues in other areas, not in Europe, not in Russia now, but it's also very risky. And we all have a big number of economic fields of activity under high risks. First of all what is linked to so-called experience economy. We talk a lot about tourism, of course, and in many countries such as Greece, Italy, Spain, and others, tourism is between 10 and 15% of GDP. But very often we forget that there is a big industry all around. The big industry, which some years ago was called as a new driver of the economy, as I said, experience economy. All big events, all cultural events, international events is under risk. We'll see what happens with Olympics Games. We know that the World Expo in Dubai was also postponed. The event which could generate more than 20 million visitors. So what will happen also in all these fields? For Russia, probably it could be an opportunity this year because borders remain closed or semi-open. We don't understand the situation, but in any case, this summer, Russians will spend their holidays in Russia. And probably for us, it will be a kind of opportunity to develop this sector, as it was the case of agriculture under European sanctions, for example. But generally speaking, this is an opportunity, of course, but also if it continues, it will be a big risk for our country, but also for the rest of the world. And finally, the big question of so-called deglobalization. A big question because we hear more and more often now to talk about this phenomenon. Is it true or not? Is pandemic crisis will close really all borders and all reduce international trade and international investments? A big question without answer. At the moment, I would say that probably I'm not so pessimistic. And if we consider statistics, world statistics, the drop of international trade was in 2008, 2010, when it reached approximately 50% of the world trade, reached 50% of the world GDP. Now it's at the level of 60%. It maintains this level, and probably we may say not the deglobalization, but the change of the model of globalization, because the globalization which we see and we used to talk about is the globalization of 90s, beginning of 2000, when a big number of political changes in former Soviet Union, in Eastern Europe, in Asia, and mainly in China, led to the complete change of the world and also of the world trade. In fact, this processes stopped probably at the beginning of 2000, and now if there are many alarmistic signals from media, first of all, and from some experts, deglobalization probably, if it's the case, not linked directly to a coronavirus effect, but the general processes in which we are. In any case, as I said, we may talk firmly about the current situation in Russia, which is serious but not dramatic. And in fact, in March, we expected more drastic and more important effects to the economy and to society. But the main question remains what will happen in the next few months by the end of this year. So thank you for your attention for this short introduction, and now probably it will be much better if we have the question and answer session and short discussion, which will be also very useful and important for me. Thank you.
Ivan Valerievich, thank you very much for your nice presentation, and I hope that the second wave will not come in the autumn, but in the same time we receive here the question, you mentioned it, especially India, about the COVID situation. We have today with us also our colleagues from the BRICS Chamber of Commerce located in India, Mr. Kumar. But maybe I will ask Mr. Kumar to give a question by himself, because it's a pertinent question. I think one is about the new labor law in Russia, and second one it's about the Russian venture company. Mr. Kumar, you are there? No, then I don't think. Okay,
Yes,
then yes, I hear you. Please.
We can see him.
Yeah. No, we cannot see him. No, he's not. Because okay, but there was two questions. The first one was how do you see the situation with new labor law after the opening of COVID-19? And Mr. Kumar asking if the small medium size company will leave or will need to close after the COVID crisis.
I would like to understand what you mean with the new law.
But there is a few change on the labor law that we heard, and there was also some promises to reduce some social cost, I think, for the companies, which was touched by the COVID situation.
Yeah, but as I said, the main target of Russian government and to maintain stability in the employment and to also to allow small and medium enterprises to survive. Once again, we have not a clear situation of what happens with small and medium enterprise. We understand that there are big difficulties. And that's why I listed a number of measures of the government. But obviously, the government and associations of enterprises, some big enterprises and small enterprises, care about the survival of small business. In Russia, generally speaking, the situation of small and medium enterprises is not easy, and it will be much more difficult now. They have to survive, and I'm sure that the government will try all the necessary in this case, because without the small and medium enterprises, there is no economy. Even the role of, as I said, of small and medium enterprises in Russia is not so important like in Europe. We all understand their importance for our economy.
Okay, thank you, Valerievich. Then I invite all of you, maybe, and I know that Andrei Daskovsky is with us today. Maybe he has some questions.
Okay. Thank you, Oleg. Well, my question is the following. Yesterday I had a group conversation on the situation on employment situation in foreign companies operating in Russia and the big Russian enterprises, and I heard forecasts from specialists in this field that in autumn we are expecting a huge percentage of headcount decrease in major Russian and foreign enterprises. For example, big Russian commercial banks and state-run banks has already unofficially announced up to 10% headcount decrease, which means for me that serious companies and serious people, they expect that in autumn there will be a real hit to the economy. Today we're talking about more or less stable situation, not that dramatic as it was expected, but the real hit will come in autumn. What is your opinion about this expectations? Thank you.
Listen, if we continue today's trajectory, I don't expect very big shocks in autumn. But once again, unfortunately, the situation is unpredictable and very unstable. Not only because of the second wave of coronavirus, but because of general situation. And on my mind, ruble will be always under pressure, and oil prices will be always under pressure. As I started to saying that we had in March 3 shocks. The possibility of remaining first 2 shocks, oil prices and ruble situation, still remains. And in this case, despite the situation with coronavirus, new black swans in the economy may happen, of course. But you know, to say that in autumn there will be a collapse, it's too risky too, because as in any economic forecasts, we may have a different scenario. And if the scenario of Russian economy will remain the same as in April, May, much better than we predicted previously, probably in autumn, yeah, obviously there will be a very difficult period, but there is also a good possibility that it will be not so dramatic.
Okay,
I will be very. You have to be cautious with all predictions now.
Well, August is a very indicative month in Russia, so we'll see in a couple of months.
Thank you, Andrei. Thank you, Ivan. I have here the question which came from Laurent Antunes. It's a Belgian businessman active in Russia for practically 30 years now, even more. Maybe Laurent will ask himself the question, please. You have to just activate on the left side of your screen the microphone. Okay, I will. Okay, I will do it. It's done. It's done, Laurent. No. Ask to unmute.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yes. Voilà.
So, hello everybody. For the time being, there was a lot of help, a lot of subsidies from the Russian government for the food industry, the agro-food, also for health and healthcare and so on. What do you expect? Will this policy change? Will there be enough money to support the food industry in the future, or can it change?
I suppose that our government will have other priorities. The food industry at this moment, always considering that we are in the coronavirus crisis and pandemic recession, the main sectors which will be affected are services, transportations. For example, one of announced help will be the financial support to the airports. We have huge risks in Russia as abroad of bankruptcy of air companies. Airfloat announced already a lot of losses, financial losses. So obviously the government will, in the case of need, like Lufthansa. I also heard that Lufthansa is in big trouble because the financial situation allows it to survive till autumn. I suppose that in the next few months, the government will support, first of all, sectors of the economy mostly damaged, as I said, in services, transportation, air transportation, first of all, but also some manufacturing industries. As I said, car sellings dropped on almost 80%. So this industry will be also supported, I suppose. The food industry is in a quite good situation now because the production of food increased despite the crisis. The food industry in Russia is well positioned, as I said, always due to the European sanctions. So I suppose Russian government will have other priorities now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, thank you. We have one more question from India coming. Mr. Farmatesh, I will. You can unmute your microphone. You can ask your question. Yeah. Please.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello. Yeah. My name is Prathamesh from India. My question is, how would the Russian market affect in the diamond industry with Indian trade and worldwide trade with Russia? How it would affect in this COVID and after this COVID?
So your question, what will happen with our trade with India, you mean?
With the diamond market, Mr.
Diamond market.
Yeah, with the diamond market, but because also it's concerned Belgium too, not only India. Thank you.
I'm not sure that I'm an expert in this particular field of trade in diamonds. Also, my own feeling that luxury market, generally speaking, will suffer during these times. Obviously, there is small percentage of rich people always able to buy diamonds and luxury products, but what we see that there will be a very big uncertainty for a medium class. They will reduce their spendings in luxury products, first of all. I work now in education, and I'm in charge of international relations of my university, and also in this field, I'm responsible on enrollment of international students. And what we see now, that there is a big uncertainty for households in Russia and abroad if about the decision to send their children to study abroad, because it's also a kind of big investment. And now we suppose that households will reduce their current spending, and first of all, luxury spendings, because of this uncertainty and because of uncertainty of future revenues and the future social stability and future situation.
Yes, thank you, because I received a message by WhatsApp, but I see no names behind. That's why I see that is Luxembourgish phone number. Maybe I will. Yes, Christoph. Oh, yes, Christoph. But maybe you will ask the question by your own, please.
Okay. Do you hear me?
Yeah. Now we hear you. Yes.
Okay, so we've been seeing some activities in mergers and acquisitions picking up after this COVID crisis. Especially we are seeing from Chinese, Japanese, and Korean investors coming to Luxembourg, picking up on all deals. I was wondering, how do you see this activity between Europe and Russia, the European Union and Russia, especially for the Luxembourg market? Do you think activities will increase, especially still the sanctions hanging over the Russian head? What do you think?
Listen, there is no changes, I suppose. No changes for many reasons. First of all, uncertainty. The second one, general uncertainty. And they said now we reduced our imports from non-CIS countries, and this trend will remain. But also there is no changes in political fields. Sanctions remain. Our relations, generally speaking, remain at the same level. So I don't think that we see many changes in our trade relations between Russia and the European Union, at least in the few next months.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. If someone have a more question, please, we'll let you the possibility, because I have no received no more requests by WhatsApp.
I see a question from Dominic.
Yes, Dominic. Yeah, I see your hand. Yeah, please.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. And I have a question, maybe it's too complicated. The United Nations and lots of governments are saying that to cope with the crisis, economic crisis, the green growth.
Dominic, may I ask you, maybe can you cut maybe your video, because the sound, it's not really clear. If you cut the video, maybe it will be better connection. Thank you.
Do you hear me better?
Yeah.
Okay. So shortly, the United Nations and many governments tell that to cope with the COVID crisis, economic consequences, the green growth is the solution. Do you think that Russia has already planned some new economic activities? I mean, green growth means commercial activities in a shorter geographic area, or developing new products that are less expensive, more affordable for citizens.
Thank you. But you see, that's why the webinar is not always very easy, because of the problem with sound. But I heard I think it's about the substantial development.
Yes, sustainable development, of course. Unfortunately, I'm not sure that the answer will be positive. It's a big issue, but not the priority at the moment, for sure.
We also, at our chamber, we have one expert on the special sustainable development, and we received recently the information that normally it's a Web RF, the ex-Web Econombank, who is now in charge to prepare the new rules, especially for banking activity based on sustainable development.
In this way, probably we all contribute to the sustainable development with webinars and online conferences, and we don't use anyway air transportations and cars to move, and obviously during all these months the air is much clearer in Moscow and other cities. But generally speaking, once again, it's a big issue. It's on the agenda, but there is several measures of the Russian government in this way. But it's not prioritized, of course. We have to think about issues of social and economic policy facing coronavirus crisis in the next months, in order to avoid the catastrophic scenario which was mentioned for autumn.
Oleg, can I have a moment?
Yes, Stefan, please.
Mr. PROSTAKOV, thanks a lot. Now maybe When you talked about sustainability just a moment ago, I understood, for example, yesterday, Austria, they made a deal with Austrian Airlines because the air industry is very heavily impacted. And they made a deal on some kind of loan or supporting them. But the condition was to reduce CO2 by 50% by 2030. And so you say that that they give you money, and you talked about Aeroflot. They also have some difficult times. And you said that you don't think that they will use it, but don't you? Do you really think that maybe it's not an opportunity for the Russian authorities really to put a bit more attention to it and to link a part of the support and benefits to sustainability or a more green way of working and doing business?
Once again, at this particular moment, I suppose the theme of green development is always on the agenda, but the priority is to maintain employment in every possible way, not necessarily very green, unfortunately. Even we may see a lot of examples in our everyday life, in Moscow, for example. We started only a few months ago to collect garbage in different ways. It's something new for Moscow, for Russian cities. But once again, it's something small, something to do step by step. And the priority now is a little bit different, at least in a few months. We have to see what happened in autumn. That's right. And after, probably we'll be back to the green agenda and the sustainable development. It still remains in the government policy, but not in the front line now.
Okay, thank you, Stefan. Thank you, Ivan Valerich. Slava Trofimovic from the Roscongress Foundation, I think, would like to ask something.
Yes, I'm here. Hi. Obviously, that without investments, there will be no development. And as we know now, the future period of time will consist with a very high risk everywhere. Nowadays, what do you think? What are the resources of future investments in the Russian economy?
You mean private investments or public investments? Because we have to see the different sources. I suppose the main driver of economic development and economic recovery in this moment, at this moment, will be always based on public investments and public projects. In Russia, you understand that it's the main driver for the economic development. And now it will remain always the main one. From the budget, from the reserves, because in any case, even with the collapse of oil prices, we still have 560 billion of US dollars in governmental funds. Private investments, it's something much more difficult in Russia and in present situation too, and foreign investments, including foreign investments. So on my mind, as in other situations of crisis, the main driver will be in investment policy will be the government, always the government.
You know that now private investments are almost zero. It means what we have to do to attract foreign investments, private investments. Is there some way for attraction?
Slava Trofimovic.
To improve investment climate in which you are a very good specialist.
You have your own answer. The same, I'm not a governmental representative here. So obviously, we may have a big talk about how to improve the investment climate in Russia, but it will be the dialogue between you and me in the same way, because we both understand that we have, I mean, the government has to improve this climate, but not you and not me are government representatives here.
Yeah, thank you.
What's the sense of this discussion? What is the sense of your question? You may also express your own opinion. It will be valuable. I know you very well, and you have your own ideas on how to improve the investment climate in Russia. But once again, it is not a discussion with the government now. Yes, we have to improve it. Yes, we have to improve it. My migration policy too, and I would say that we, as a university, we also suffer from different restrictions in the migration policy for our international staff, and so on and so on. It's a big issue for international companies. But once again, everyone here knows what is it, and everyone here knows that in Russia there is a lot to do in order to improve this climate. Probably you're a little bit confused. I'm not a government representative here.
Thank you, Slav Drafovich. Thank you very much. We have one more question from Philippe van der Borole, the former honorary consul of Belgium to Belarus. Please. Philippe, I will unmute you. Wait a second.
Okay. Hello, everybody from Belgium. I'm thinking also on food production, pharmaceutics, and car. Do you see changes or action being done, like, for instance, local production or move to train transport for the supply chain in order to get less dependent of import, for instance, from China?
Sorry, could you repeat once again?
Do you see changes and actions done by the government against, I find there's a problem in supply chain, and there's a very big dependence of China, of products from China. Do you see some changes and actions, for instance, like local production of food?
Listen, what do you mean by dependence? Obviously, we buy a lot from China, like many other countries, European countries too. It's impossible to change something in a couple of months. So obviously, there is a lot of discussions on the opportunity and the necessity to work on and to support local industries, Russian industries, and to be less dependent from importations. Probably there will be a big shift in this way. As I said, the international trade is decreasing. And as it was with European sanctions and US sanctions, obviously this situation helps to produce locally. Probably it will be the case also now, and always with China. But once again, there is a very short time to say something. The same question could be raised also for European countries, for Belgium, for France or Italy. I don't think that there is an answer, an immediate answer. Everybody, every smart businessman is thinking about it. But the main question is the costs. Is it convenient to produce locally? Is it more convenient than to buy it from China? We'll see. We'll see what will happen also in the transport, in the different restrictions that we may have, border restrictions, etc. New laws defending internal markets. It's a big issue, and a big issue also to see in the few months. It's quite probable that in many countries we'll see the situation when the local producers will be supported by the government, also for political reasons. Why not?
Okay.
Oleg, can
yes,
I?
yes. Of course, Stefan.
Okay.
I just
Mr.
muted the microphone one by one because it was some clicking. That's why. Please.
Yeah, no, Mr. Prostakov, I have a bit different opinion, and also Philip, because I'm in logistics, so I follow a bit what's happening. And of course, there is a big dependency on China. But what you see even today, that if your supplier is next door, that he or she cannot supply anymore because they also close down because of the people are not available. There's no resources. So even if your supplier is 100 meters far away, you have sometimes a disruption in the supply chain. So it's, and I think if we see in the flows, China was heavily impacted, but was very short. And what we think, but okay, it's just our personal opinion as a company, we see that there will be no shift in supply, and they will still do China because of the price, like you said correctly. Yeah. Only what we expect that there are more buffer storage. So during the supply chain, that they will have not 2 weeks storage, but a 4 weeks buffer storage, so that they have more buffer in the supply chain. But yeah, I think cost will always be at the end a very dominating factor. So I don't think it will have a shift in deglobalization, but it's more that the supply chain will be a bit fuller over the whole end-to-end supply. But that's my personal opinion from logistics point of view.
Thank you, Stefan. Ivan Valerievich, you wish to reply?
I completely agree. Once again, the main factor is the cost, and that you have to support. Probably something will change, and but we don't know what will change. But for sure, something will change also in the chains of supply. But anyway, China is a very big supplier for all of us. It's very difficult to cut all logistic change at the moment, even with the coronavirus. Even if the coronavirus imposed a lot of new obstacles. I suppose everyone is waiting to the best times when the obstacles will be lifted.
Okay, thank you. We are at time already. It's 7 o'clock. If someone have more questions, don't see that. Then okay. Then I thank you, all of you. Thank you very much to join us today. We will try to repeat this kind of event as many as we can. As many you will join us and will be with us. Please, next time be more active with more questions. Ivan Valerievich, thank you very much one more time.
Thank you
very much. Yeah, thank you for this long dialogue, and I think it will help all of us to understand better the situation in economy now. Thank you.
And see you later, I hope, offline too.
Yes, thank you very much, all of you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you.